Dear distinguished audience, thank you very much for having me. I'm Dr. Tutin Ayanti, Associate Professor of Architecture at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. I hope everyone is well and safe despite this devastating situation. In the course of my research on gender in architecture, I have arrived to a point to question of how the Islamic society has implemented gender segregation in its public space. So today, I would like to present about women and the production of their space in the mosques in Indonesia. I will begin my talk by discussing the problems of women's access to the mosques succinctly, and then I will explain a bit about Muslim women in Indonesia and how they are unique even if compared to Muslim women in other parts of the world. Then we will discuss some examples of the architectural arrangement of women's prayer space in Indonesian mosques. And finally, I will also show the rise of female patronage in Indonesian mosques. The different accommodations of women in the Islamic public space stem from the varied interpretation of hadith, or a collection of traditions containing Prophet Muhammad's sayings and exemplary daily practices that are used as a major source of guidance for Muslims after the Quran. Some Islamic scholars interpret that women's best place of prayer is their private room in their homes, but some others understand that while praying in their homes is good, there should not be any restriction of women's participation in the mosque. In fact, Nabi studies revealed that women in the Prophet's era actively participated in the Prophet's mosque for prayer, listening to the Islamic teachings, and so on. So, what's wrong with women and the mosques? In several parts of the world, women are banned from attending and performing prayers in the mosque. Some of the mosques allow women to enter, but do not provide women with a proper place for praying. Asra Nomani, an American journalist, for example, was one who experienced women's marginalization and exclusion from the mosque program in Milton Town. Or in Melbourne, as Rachel Woodlock wrote, women might enter the mosque, but they were provided with a space that was not decent for praying. Women can pray in the mosque, but they pray under the stairs or in the storage, not in the clean and serene main prayer hall. A similar situation was also found in the mosques in Western Europe, as studied by Nai Hagen. And in fact, I myself also experienced a moment when I was not allowed to pray in the mosque in Indonesia, because I am a woman and the community mosque was only for men. But this was a very rare case in Indonesia. As I surfed on the internet, so far I only found 2 mosques that are restricted to men in Indonesia. Women's poor access to the mosques has ignited various reactions to it. The Friday prayer, led by Amina Wadud for a mixed congregation of male and female, was the most radical reaction that took place in New York in 2005. As we know, the majority of Islamic scholars agree that a mixed congregational prayer of women and men should be led by a man who has high knowledge of Islam. In countries like the US, a prayer leader or imam plays a critical role in the mosque, since he or she also leads the mosque and its all religious practices. The imam also directs the application of the Islamic law in daily prayers. Additionally, the Friday prayer is the very core of the Islamic prayer that almost all Islamic scholars made it compulsory for Muslim men. Thus, Wadud saw that conducting a Friday prayer attended by male and female worshippers and led by herself was a strategic act to protest on gender equality, particularly on religious authority in Islam. A more moderate movement was the establishment of the Women's Mosque of America and Los Angeles in 2014. Many women have experienced exclusion and marginalization in the mosques, where their husbands and sons could attend. Their hunger for religiosity, Islamic knowledge, social interactions with their Muslim fellows has been the background of the establishment of this mosque. The Women's Mosque of America in LA has facilitated women with a place for community engagement, a place for community prayers and gathering, and a place for learning about Islam. Now, we shall move on to Indonesia, which, as you know, is the world's most populous Muslim country. Muslims are approximately 87% of the population. And when talking about Muslim women in Indonesia, I would say that they enjoy privilege to participate in the public life. The mosques are relatively open for them. Although women's participation in the mosque organization is still low, but women are mostly welcomed to use the mosques for the religious activities. In this picture, for example, the women of the Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia organization gathered in the veranda of Yogyakarta Great Mosque to show their support to Palestine. And this picture shows a women's monthly meeting held by the Aisyah women in a meeting hall owned by the Sultanate Mosque. Here, women listened to updates on women's condition in Indonesia, and they discussed how they could contribute to the situation. The Aisyah organization is one of the largest women's Islamic organization in Indonesia, and it is interesting to know that the Aisyah founded women's mosques in some cities. Indonesia has many women preachers, and they can give their lectures in front of the public in the mosques. Indonesian women also significant parts of their community. In many cases, they are significant groups to be counted politically, for example, in the presidential election. Women can use the mosque not only for praying or Islamic learning, but also for community activities. This was a session when I advocated women on disaster mitigation early last year. As I asked for time for a presentation, they provided the community mosque as a place for the meeting. And even the community trusts women to maintain this mosque. So, I would say that Indonesian women have wide access to almost all mosques in Indonesia. Most of the mosques are designed with a specific space designated as women's prayer space. But as I will show you in later slides, the prayer space is flexible. I categorize the mosque into two groups. The first one, the traditional, or specifically the Sultanate mosques, which were built in the 18th to the early 20th century by the Sultanates. And the second one is the contemporary mosques, which were built later in the second half of the 20th century to the present. The Sultanate mosques are representative of the traditional mosque because they served as centers of Islamic teaching during the establishment of the religion in the country in the 15th to 18th century. Women's prayer rooms were additions that were built later, and the rooms were mostly provided as separate rooms to the side of the main prayer halls, which are for men. While the contemporary mosques are usually designed with a prayer space for women. The space can be at the balcony or mezzanine, to the back of the main hall, or a temporarily reserved space at the back of the main hall. Okay, so this one is the Maghrib Mosque in Central Java. This was the oldest Sultanate mosque that survives in Southeast Asia. The mosque itself was built in 1479. But the women's prayer room, or called the palestran, was only added in 1710 to the south side of the mosque. The prayer room and the main hall are connected by some windows, although no visual access is possible. You know, the Maghrib Mosque is a very popular religious tourism destination since it was built by the legendary 9 saints who spread Islam on the island. And it seems to be more difficult to make a regulation of segregation these days. As you can see in this picture, women come with their male family and they hold a congregational prayer inside the main prayer hall, although there is a room reserved for women. It is a bit different in Yogyakarta Great Mosque. Yogyakarta Great Mosque is the Sultanate State Mosque of the Yogyakarta Sultanate. The mosque was constructed in 1773 and the women's room was built in 1839. As you can see here, the women's room is located to the south side of the main prayer hall. It sits on a floor level approximately 60 centimeters lower than the main prayer hall. The door is plain and with no ornaments if compared to the golden carved door to the main prayer hall. We can see here that the main prayer hall possesses all the privileges of a Sultanate State Mosque. It is located under the soaring pyramidal roof and equipped with a golden minbar where a male preacher delivers his Friday preach, a mihrab where the prayer leader stands to lead the congregational prayer, and a maksura, a box which was once reserved for the Sultan to pray. All of this represent the Sultanate authority on this mosque. If compared to the splendid main prayer hall, the women's room or the palaestran is pretty simple and without ornaments. Praying in this room, women were not able to look at the prayer leader's gesture when he leads the prayer. In the past, women rarely attended the Great Mosque, and when they did, they prayed in this secluded prayer room. But there was a change of interpretation of the Islamic law with regard to women's position in a congregational prayer in 1957. According to the new interpretation, women should do their prayer behind men. And as a result, the mosque board moved women to the main hall. In their new place, women can see the imam as he leads the prayer and the preacher as he delivers the Islamic teaching. While the special arrangement of the traditional mosques tend to place women to the secluded room to the side of the main prayer hall, the contemporary mosques usually allocate women space at the balcony or mezzanine to ensure sex segregation and women's privacy in the mosque. This is Central Java Great Mosque, built in the city of Semarang in 2006. It was designed by Ahmad Fanani. In this mosque, women are provided with a prayer room at the balcony above the main prayer hall, which is used by men. But in daily prayers, when the mosque is not full of visitors, women pray next to men in the main prayer hall. The separators are obviously not for visual obstruction, as you can see here, but it is more indexical. It is only to show which space is reserved for whom. A similar case is found in Salman Mosque in Bandung. The mosque was designed by Ahmad Nukman in 1962. This mosque was very important in Southeast Asian Islamic architectural history because it marked the modern movement in Islamic architecture in the region through the removal of a dome as an element that was previously embraced as a sign of a mosque. Additionally, the main prayer hall was designed free of columns to allow unbreakable prayer lines. Ahmad Nukman had designed the balcony at the back of the main prayer hall for women to pray. The layout allowed women to see the congregation below without them being seen. But in today's practice, women stand behind men in the main prayer hall. Some mosques apply temporary dividers, especially during prayers. This one is a community mosque in Bandung, designed by Masrur Irsyam. the architect has reserved the balcony for women, but they pray on the first floor behind men in daily prayers. This is perhaps because the congregations are not too many, and it is a bit hard for old women to walk up the stairs for daily prayers. While there is no divider during Islamic lectures like the one that we can see here, glass dividers are installed temporarily during prayers. This is the Al-Irsyad Mosque in Kota Baru, Parahyangan. The mosque design is inspired by Ka'bah in Mecca. And in Al-Irsyad Mosque, there is no specific space that is reserved for women, except the spot at the back that is reserved using temporary dividers. Okay, we often see screens, short or tall, are used as temporary dividers. But sometimes women's spot is only reserved using a prayer mat that is spread at the back of the prayer hall, as in the case that we can see in Banjaratma Mosque. This mosque is located in a highway rest area. Here, there is no divider. We have seen women's prayer space in the mosques that are attended by both men and women. In addition to the prayer space in the mosque for mixed congregation of men and women, there are also very few mosques that are built for women. These women's mosques are located close to the Yogyakarta Great Mosque. The Aisyah Women's Mosque was built by the Aisyah organization in 1922 when women's access to the Great Mosque was still limited. Here, a woman leads the prayers. And women also teach Islam to children and other women in this mosque. Another women's mosque is Ar-Rosyad Mosque, which is found nearby. But different from the Aisyah Mosque, the prayers are sometimes led by men. Both the Aisyah and Ar-Rosyad Women's Mosques are centers of Muslim women's activities and have served as their representation in the community. I observed that women's participation in the mosques increases lately. I found some mosques that were built by women and named by them, not by their husband's name. The first one is the Dian Al-Mahri Golden Dome Mosque, built by Mrs. Dian Al-Mahri. The mosque is splendid with imported marbles and other fine materials. The second one is Suciati Saliman Mosque in Yogyakarta. This one was built by Mrs. Suciati Saliman to provide inclusive access for all members of community. Interestingly, both Dian and Suciati are successful businesswomen. They built their mosques as expressions of their piety. Another mosque that was initiated by a women's Islamic group is currently built in Bandung, West Java. Nurunisa Muslimah Center is designed by architect Suwanto Gana, aiming to provide women with space that is free to use for gathering and learning Islam. The mosque itself is also open for men actually, but women control the use of space. The Muslimah Center is equipped with a lactation room and a menstruation corridor that allows women to continue to be present in the mosque while they are menstruating. Well, to conclude, I would like to highlight that there are various interpretations of Islamic law pertaining women's prayer in the mosque and their spatial arrangement. Muslims attempts to preserve modesty to minimize interactions between men and women through segregation. And today, the spatial layout is more flexible in response to the dynamic gender relations in society. Women are provided with space in the mosque, but they are now more visible to the public and facilitated more freedom to participate in the religious and social activities. Modern Muslims believe that the hijab or veil is in the heart, and thus visibility is allowed as long as the heart's purity is preserved. And finally, economic independence allows female patronage in the mosque construction. Successful women build their mosques as an act of piety with emphasis on social inclusion. Thank you.